Jane Lacy-Hulbert is a senior scientist with DairyNZ. She spent years uncovering the various causes and effects of mastitis in New Zealand's dairying industry.
What are some of the most important research findings in the mastitis area?
A lot of the work over the last 10 years has been, a lot of it been focusing on strep uberis. Streptococcus uberis is an important bacteria for New Zealand. It's probably one of the most common causes of clinical mastitis for us in New Zealand. And so we've spent quite a lot of time over the years trying to understand where is it in the environment, how does it get on cows, why is it such a problem in heifers, why is it such a problem in some of the older cows, and why is it such a problem around calving. So that's been formed quite a lot of our research over the last sort of 10 years or so.
And what conclusions have come from that, if any?
A number of conclusions have come through from there. Mainly that strep uberis is around the cow all the time. We think it comes from somewhere inside the digestive system, somewhere in the rumen or actually in the hindgut. And so that moves out onto the paddocks and onto the races, out onto the cow themselves, and it somehow gets onto the cow's teats, obviously when they're walking around and that sort of stuff. We find one of the main sources of strep uberis in the farm that causes mastitis is probably actually on the races, on the farm tracks, and usually those ones that are leading up to the farm dairy. That's where the highest level of strep uberis can be found on a farm. So it isn't actually a bug that's out there in the paddocks before the cows get there. They actually take it with them from the races, out onto the paddock, maybe on their feet or actually inside their guts, spread it around, lie on it, and that's how they're actually getting contamination somewhere out there.
So does race surface have an effect?
We know that the wet and dirty race material that you see in the winter on the farm tracks is definitely has a high level of strep uberis in it. I often think that the races act like a fridge in the winter. They keep everything cold and slow growing, but it's still there, doesn't kill it off. But in the winter, in the summer, it acts like an oven. So if we can get nice dry weather like we've had this summer, it really does reduce down the amount of strep uberis on the races. So yeah, in terms of material, just keeping the slop, the wet muck on the top, keeping that under control is wise.
And following on from that, you've got further research planned or already underway?
That element of the research sort of came to a halt at that point, and we've then been working on looking for genetic factors that help affect the cow's susceptibility to get mastitis, and also looking at vaccine and immunology technologies to actually help them increase their resistance to mastitis. So our main interest is how can we make cows more resistant. We certainly see a population that's resistant out there.
Have you had results in those areas as yet?
There have been some positive and encouraging results. Some of it's protected by IP and commercial arrangements, so we can't actually talk too much about it. But yeah, we certainly find some positive developments in both angles.
So it's a case of watch this space for farmers looking
yeah.
for further ideas there.
Yeah.
Are there other areas that you would like to investigate as regards mastitis, but you've not had the funding or ability to get into as yet?
I guess one of the areas that is going to come round again is actually how to deal more with the contagious mastitis problems that we see, but also to deal with dealing with mastitis in emerging systems. So more indoor housing, more cows kept on concrete. These are going to be a risk factor for mastitis, and we need to have some clear guidelines for farmers about how they can manage those systems to reduce the level of mastitis in the cows. Because we're at risk of finding that we get more of a different type of mastitis called coliform mastitis, which is caused by E. coli and other bacteria that also live in the gut. And as we change their diet and put more grain and more starch into the diet, we do see more of these bugs actually in the fecal material, and that then can cause more mastitis. And it's a more serious, more virulent, pathogenic version of mastitis. It really does impact on the cow quite dramatically.
So what percentage would that be of mastitis cases at the moment?
It's still quite low, but farms where they have feed pads, where they have calving pads, where they have indoor housing, they can see it. Not all of them, but some do start to see it. But for many farmers, they won't know what they're getting because they don't actually, there isn't much bacterial sampling that goes on off that milk. Josh was talking earlier about how we sample all the cows here as they get clinical mastitis. That facility isn't available on those commercial farms. So more and more of the herds where they are dealing with higher levels of mastitis or dealing with sort of these emerging coliform issues, they're starting to collect more samples. The vet's giving them tubes and they're collecting more samples, putting them in the freezer, and then they can send them off at a later date to get them analysed, to actually see what sort of bugs are causing problems. Because once you know the bug, you can actually manage it better. It really does help us to understand whether you've got a contagious problem or an environmental problem.
What's the future for mastitis treatment on New Zealand dairy farms?
I think we will definitely be going towards a situation where we have to justify more strongly why we're using the drugs that we do. There's a lot of pressure in Europe to try and reduce down the amount of antibiotics used in farm animals for a variety of reasons, and we can't avoid that. It will come here. We will find that we have to justify on a cow by cow basis why we use a particular treatment. At the moment we have a good robust system, but it's going to get tighter.
Is that a reason to be looking at more natural remedies?
Probably. It would give us a lot of reassurance going forward if we have alternatives in the toolkit, so to speak. The antibiotics that we use have stood us in good stead for many, many years. We're still using some of the same drugs that we were using many years ago, and we don't see a growing resistance to them. However, we need alternatives in that toolkit.
Next week on New Zealand Dairy Farmer is all about health, safety and looking after the rural population. We'll catch up with Joyce Brown, who, together with her husband Warwick, farms 77 hectares on the slopes of Mount Pirongia, south of Hamilton. We'll talk with her and local farmer Henry Koning about health issues directly affecting our dairying community and what efforts are being made to address them. We'll see you then. New Zealand Dairy Farmer is proudly brought to you by Hanson Products, providing Kiwi farmers with water system solutions for over 50 years.